Welcome to the podcast, Dario. It's great to have you on. Are you able to give us a quick overview of how you founded your company Carbonix and what you guys do?
Great to be here. Thank you. Carbonix started looking to solve the problem of long-range aerial data capture at scale. So what that means is taking photographs and scans of critical infrastructure, so power lines, pipelines, open cut mines, land management, anywhere where there is value in having up-to-date, precise situational awareness of what's happening on the ground, and you want a higher resolution than you can get with satellites. Providing a vehicle that can have that range to carry a payload that can do that job was really an open problem in the market, and we set about solving it using technologies that I transferred from America's Cup yacht racing originally, but basically lightweight, aerodynamically efficient aircraft that can fly for a long time.
Wow. Super interesting space that you're in, and obviously using technology to achieve that. How did you go about validating the idea and actually starting the company and getting your first customers on board and developing out the technology?
Yeah, so because it's a hardware problem, obviously there's an initial investment you need to make to build a prototype, prove the concept, get something working. And I sort of bootstrapped that, did a little bit of work for the marine industry that I was familiar with, used that money to subsidize developing the first sort of prototype aircraft. And once we had something flying, we actually initially applied for a couple of tenders. One of them was actually for defense to develop an aircraft and show that capability. That allowed us to sort of get going commercially and prove the concept. Then once we had that, we started knocking on doors and going to utilities, miners, companies that offer services into those industries, and really get a chance to prove that we could do what we said in terms of the flight time and the um, data capture quality. And it was really interesting because we were doing that at a time when the regulations were just starting to form around it because it was something very new. And so at the same time, we were talking to Civil Aviation Safety Authority, CASA here in Australia, and the FAA in the US about how do we fit in? What do you need to do to ensure safety without stifling the development of the industry? So it was very much about getting that buy-in in terms of the value proposition and then working through the problem of adoption. How do all the different stakeholders transition from what they're currently doing to what we envision is a better way to do things, in a way where the risks are managed and they are comfortable and confident to take that on.
Nice. So, what was the old way of them doing things compared to the new way? What were they previously doing?
Yeah, so the incumbent is a combination of crewed aircraft, so it'll be a conventional helicopter or a small fixed wing aircraft with one or two people on board. And that's really the layer in between, say, a satellite and maybe a small drone that can do a 20-minute flight time and do individual poles and wires, for example. And really, they both have drawbacks. So, with the manned aircraft capability, first of all, they're not really happy flying low and slow, and so you can't get close enough into the target to get really high quality data. They're obviously expensive to run. They burn hundreds of kilos of fuel, and there's a person in them, so if anything goes wrong, it's potentially quite dangerous. They have a large noise footprint on the ground. So there are all those restrictions, but the data is so valuable that's still worth doing in terms of the cost benefit. And so being able to come in and offer something that can fly lower and slower, get high quality data more often, cheaper, safer, and with a smaller noise and carbon footprint is obviously attractive. But then the challenge is how do you actually integrate that into the operations and business as usual? The other component that they were using and are still using, but obviously less now with the drones, is actually sending people out. And so that's a ground crew. So there's people driving cars on the road to get to the site, and then whether it's getting into a property or climbing a pole, it's difficult because you've got this asset that's spread out over literally hundreds of kilometers in the middle of nowhere. It might be through a national park or a desert or a highland somewhere. To get eyes on that and properly understand the conditions so that you can plan around the maintenance, the vegetation encroachment, the upgrades, is really difficult to do. So it's a tough problem.
Yeah, totally. So, in terms of your technology and obviously selling it into these companies. How have you done that?
Working with them, obviously, is the short answer. Um, Part of it is proving that it works, and so that's getting a chance to go and do a proof of concept, a demo, a short flight to provide a data set that they can look at and evaluate. Once they're comfortable with that, then it's about scaling. So can we do that same thing over the distances, in weather, over time, with the regulatory approvals, the training, the safety procedures in place? And so it's an exercise in building confidence. Now, the good thing is that once you've done it with one customer, that then transfers onto other customers. And you also have to work with, the different points in the buying cycle and where they are in terms of their company culture and their maturity. But you are dealing with very inherently conservative sort of industries where, yes, money is important, but it's also safety critical and it's about keeping the lights on. And so it's confidence building. It's that step by step building a relationship with the customer, showing that you're in it for the long run, you can do the work, you have the technical capability, you understand their problem, and also developing the business model where it's really we're not selling drones to customers except for defense. In the commercial space, they don't really want to be in the business of owning and operating drones. They want the data. And so being able to package that all up and offer it as a service is good for them and it's good for us as a business.
Interesting. So as a service rather than just a product. How do you sell that then as the service? How do you package it all together, and what's the method of delivery?
So it's basically per kilometer or per hectare. It's around what we're scanning. So, you know, as you scan more, obviously the cost incrementally increases. It goes down per kilometer, but the total goes up. Um, and then we take the data off the drone, which is either a 3D scan, which is effectively a three-dimensional digital twin, or it's a photography or a combination of the two. So it's visual, it might be IR, it might be LiDAR. And we check that it's correctly formatted, it's geotagged to the right location, it's all compatible with whatever post-processing software they might use to generate insights. And then we either hand it over as data that they can then ingest and find the insights that they're looking for, or we'll partner with a post-processing specialist that will actually do that and actually write a report in the end, basically, which has all those insights in it.
Hmm.
So again, it's evolving and it's different for different customers, whether it's just raw data or it's processed data or some combination of the two. That varies, but basically, as far as the customer is concerned, they tell us what to scan and when. We go and do it. We take care of the deployment, the logistics, the permits, the training, the safety case, and we generate the data, and that's what the customer buys.
Nice. So in terms of the value proposition and how you actually sell to potential clients and customers, well, first of all, how do you get in touch with them, and then how do you educate them on your value proposition and why they should work with you?
I think initially it was really about reputation building. So I was very keen early on to establish what I call a breadcrumb trail of our development. So really going into some detail because it's technically interesting about we've put this feature on the aircraft and we've done this testing and how cool is it that it can do this and we've reached this milestone today. So if people go and look at our LinkedIn feed, our blog, our website, they can see that there's a long history of very in-depth, precise engineering and testing and sort of something that we can take seriously as a product. Then a few years ago now, we started reaching out into the industries, and it was initially basically a BD program where you get the names of the potential buyers in the different organizations that you're targeting, establish contacts, send out newsletters, etc. But once that initial outreach had been done, we found that most of the customers were inbound inquiries. And so when someone in an industry that's not drones, that's an end user of a drone, is looking for that service, one way or another we pop up, whether it's through a Google search or through word of mouth, um, and they go through and vet, and we don't really have sort of near peer competitors in terms of the capability that we have, the maturity that we have, and the way we approach it. And so we've had inquiries from the US, from Canada, from Spain, from South Africa, where they say, we need this capability. You're the only ones who have it. We start talking. They realize that, we're serious. We're able to provide it. And then basically the relationship grows from there. So the short answer is that right now, most of the inquiries are inbound.
Interesting. So yeah, so obviously doing a little BD outreach program. Um, have you got a sales team in house, or is it mostly as you rely on inbounds, you're taking these calls and
We do have a
meetings?
sales team, but they're mainly fielding inquiries and call it triage, but basically planning the delivery around the demand. So it's basically trying to stretch our capability to cover the demand as the moment at the moment as we grow. Um, Again, that will obviously there'll come a time when we'll be ready to do more outreach. But most of the work at the moment is that relationship building with customers, so that the customer facing team is about solving the problem, scheduling, following them up to make sure they're happy, looking at what the next mission is, transitioning from those ones and twos into that business as usual cadence of 3-year contract. So we're more focused on that than on sort of new customer acquisition. But again, that's a matter of the phase that you're in and the growth of the business.
Totally. So yeah, mostly inbounds, word of mouth, Google search. What have been some of the strategies that you've used in terms of inbound and in terms of you working on SEO? Any other marketing strategies that you have used to effectively generate those results?
Look, there's a little bit of that. There's an online presence. There's certainly being active on LinkedIn has been very helpful because it is B2B. Certainly the website, some SEO. We've also had a consistent presence at shows, and trade shows tend to be a very good source of that word of mouth connection. And initially it was either air shows when drones weren't really prominent as a feature, or the industry specific shows, so mining, agriculture, utilities, and often being on a stand, for example, with the New South Wales government or the Australian Pavilion at a defence show, um, being part of that bigger network where we are a capability that's being showcased rather than sort of our own stand. That puts you in a prominent position. It gives you some credibility being part of that group. And there's a lot of activation that happens in the background where they bring people through, etc. So yeah, a combination of all of that. There's probably no one standout in terms of the results. I think it's just keeping that presence there and continually putting out there that you're doing something interesting, that you have a passionate team, that you're hitting goals and moving forward. Part of that is also investor relations, obviously, to show that the business is growing. Yeah, it's a combination.
Totally. So investor relations, you mentioned that it was bootstrapped at the start. Has that transitioned over time to receiving some investment from external
We raised the
partners?
seed round
Yeah.
back in 2021.
Nice. And how has that helped in terms of the growth of the company?
I think again it goes back to being hardware, which is generally capital intensive. To develop an aircraft, you've got to physically build it. You have to go out there and test it. Um, Upgrades, alternative bits and pieces, going through that process of validating every subsystem, every system, every component. So that all takes capital. And having that capital allows you to get your product to a point where it is to a standard, where it meets regulatory requirements. I guess it's probably parallel with medical devices, but aviation is obviously regulated. There's a safety consideration there. There's the value of both the asset that you're flying over and the payload that you're carrying. So to go through that process of getting a product that is class leading or world leading, very hard to do that when you're bootstrapped in this environment where it's not a couple of people sitting in an office writing software. There's an overhead there that has to be invested, but that also becomes a moat because it's something that is difficult for other people to replicate.
Totally, totally. And then in terms of future growth plans for the company, what are you looking at for the next year to 3 years in terms of innovation or revenue growth? What are the kind of plans for the company?
Yeah, I think that growing adoption and conversion is the main focus. So again, we've come off the back of a long R&D cycle. We have a system that we're very comfortable is unique. We do have a product roadmap, but a lot of the features in the product roadmap aren't necessary to satisfy the customer's needs today. There's stuff that will come in to make us more efficient, improve the margin, expand the scope of missions. So what we have on the table at the moment, we can do with the tool that we have. And so the focus is on supporting that tool, refining it, maybe making sure the time between services, for example, is a bit longer so that it becomes more efficient to use. And go out and do those. With some customers, it's early missions and proof of concepts. With other customers, it's already business as usual, moving as many customers as possible from that proof of concept to business as usual bucket, and growing that presence in the market and that, again, cloud credibility history. We're doing that in Australia. We already have some work in the US, and that's probably going to be the next market where we focus. Again, similar geography, similar culture, similar regulatory environment, much bigger. And so, grow market presence in Australia, grow the US presence, and really achieve that traction and scale that then demonstrates the potential.
Awesome. That sounds exciting. And in terms of your journey as a founder over the last 11 years, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome?
Getting your head around the aspect of a team rather than just the tech. And again, it depends how you come into it, right? If you're an entrepreneur who's more focused on business, then the challenge might be the tech. In my case, it was the other way around. I came into it very much focused on the tech. I like that aspect of it. I have the knowledge and the understanding to look for innovative solutions to technical problems. Turning that into a business was a learning curve, obviously, and I very much recognized early on that I needed the support around me to be able to run the business as well as just develop the tech. And how you structure that is a challenge. And I've tried, bringing in a CEO at one point, then sort of how that interaction works and how you keep things on track as a director when you have a CEO as opposed to being CEO yourself. That managing the day-to-day running of the business, but also the strategic direction and the balance between those two was probably the biggest challenge, sort of learning to do that. And then how you, I guess, the accountability, the responsibility for making decisions and changing direction and keeping both investors happy as well as customers as well as the team. You're kind of in the middle balancing them all to keep them all going in the same direction. And you have to keep putting energy in to make sure that alignment remains and corrects as necessary. But it's also very satisfying when you see that the team is aligned and is working well and they are executing the vision, and investors are behind you and customers are happy. That's the end goal, and so that's what keeps you motivated.
Yeah, 100%. Is there one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self in the early days of starting the company?
It would be back yourself. Know your limitations, but ultimately be comfortable that you can make the decisions and deal with it and reach the right outcome.
Good advice. Good advice. Thanks for your time, Dario. Awesome to have you on and great to hear from you. And if people want to get in touch with you, they can obviously find you on LinkedIn, on your website, Carbonix. Is that the best place?
It's carbonix.com.au. And my LinkedIn is, just look up my name. But happy to connect with people.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.